I'm a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like anyone else. I like the newer games, but I don't mind playing the classics. I don't think I've ever played glitchy or hacked games before, though I don't think I'd ever want to play any after that experience I had. It started on a nice summer afternoon. I was playing Sonic Unleashed. I liked how you get to explore the towns in it, until I noticed, out of my peripheral vision, that the mailman had arrived and put something in my mailbox as usual and left. I paused my game to go see what I got in the mail. The only thing in the mailbox was a CD case for computers and a note. I took it inside. I looked at the note. At first I realized it was from my dear friend Kyle, let's just call him that, whom I hadn't heard from in 2 weeks, because I unrecognized his handwriting. Although it was weird as it looked badly written and scratchy, like somewhat difficult to read, as if Kyle was having a hard time writing it down and did it in a hurry. This is what he wrote. Tom, I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late. I was hoping you could do it for me. I can't do it. He's after me, and if you don't destroy the CD, he'll come after for you too. He's too fast for me. Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too, and it's too late for me. Destroy the disc and you'll destroy him, but do it quick, otherwise he'll catch you. Don't even play the game. It's what he wants. Must destroy it. Please, Kyle. Well, that was certainly weird. Even though Kyle is my best friend and I haven't seen him in 2 weeks, I didn't just do what he asked me. I didn't think of a simple game disc would do anything bad to him. After all, it's just a game, right? Boy, was I wrong about that. Anyway, I looked at the disc and it looked like an ordinary computer CDR disc, except it had a black marker on it written Sonic.exe, and it was much unlike Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have gotten it from someone else, like a pawn shop or eBay, when I saw Sonic written on the CD. I was actually excited and wanted to play it since I'm a big Sonic fan. I went up to my room and turned on my computer and put the disc in and installed the game. When the title screen popped up, I noticed that it was first Sonic game. I was like, awesome, because like I said earlier, I like the classics. The first thing I noticed was out of place was when I pressed start, there was a split second when I saw the title image turn into something much different, something like I now consider horrifying, before cutting to black. I remember that image looked like in the split second of before the game cut to black. The sky had darkened and the title emblem was rusted and ruined. The Sega of 1991 was now, instead of Sega, to 666. And the water had turned like red like blood. But the freakiest thing that was the split second frame was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding, with two glowing red dots were staring right at me, and his smile had stretched wider up to the edge of his face. I was rather disturbed about this image, but when I saw it, I fought, though I figured it must have been a glitch and forgot all about it. After it cut back to black, it stayed like that for about 10 seconds or so, and then another weird thing happened. The save file from the select from Sonic the Hedgehog Free popped up, and I was like, what the fuck? What is this thing doing in the first Sonic game? Anyway, I noticed something was off and the background was dark and cloudy sky like bad Stardust Speedway level from Sonic CD, and there was only 3 save files. The music was that creepy caverns of the winter music from Earthbound. It was only extended and seemed to have been in reverse, and the image for the save file, wherever you see a preview of the level you're just on, is just a red static above all the files. What freaked me out was more than the characters select. It showed only Tails, Knuckles, and to my surprise, Dr. Robotnik. Now I was sure something was up. I mean, how can you play as Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? That's when I realized that this wasn't a glitchy game, it was a hacked game. Yeah, it definitely looked hacked. It was definitely really creepy, but as a smart gamer, I wasn't scared, or at least I tried not to be. I told myself that it was just a hacked game, and there was nothing wrong with that. Anyways, shaking off the creeped feeling out, I picked file 1, and chose Tails when I selected, and I got started. The game froze for about 5 seconds, and then I heard a creepy pixelated laugh that sounded awful, not like the cafe guy from the Final Fantasy, before cutting to black. The screen stayed black for about 10 seconds or more, then it showed the typical level little thing, except for the simplistic shapes that were in different shades of red, and the text showed only Hill Act 1. The screen faded in and the level title vanished before revealing Tails in the Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1. The music was different though. It sounded like a peaceful melody in reverse. Anyway, I started playing and had the Tails start running like you would in any of the classic Sonic games. What was odd was that Tails was running along the level and there was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for 5 minutes. That was when the peaceful music started to get lower into slow, deep tones, very slowly as I kept going. I suddenly saw something, and I stopped to see what it was. It was one of the small animals lying dead on the ground, bleeding. That was when the music started to slow down. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face, and that I have never saw him have before. So I had to move along, as he kept worried look on his face, as he kept moving. I saw more dead animals as Tails moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowers and he keeps moving past more dead animals. I was shocked to see how they all died. They all looked like somebody had killed them in rather gruesome ways. Was a squirrel was a hanged on a tree of what appeared to be his entrails hanging out. A bunny had all 4 of his limbs torn off, and a duck had his eyes gouged out. His throat was slit. I felt sick to my stomach. When I saw this massacre, and apparently so did Tails, after about a minute or more seconds, there was no more animals and the music seemed to have stopped. I still kept Tails to continue. After about a minute passed after the music stopped, Tails was running up a hill, and then he stopped. It wasn't until I saw why. Sonic was there on the other side of the title screen, with the back against Tails, with his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but when his smile faltered, obviously because Sonic wasn't responding to him, if was not reacting, acting as if he was totally oblivious to Sonic's presence. Tails walked slowly towards Sonic, and I noticed that it wasn't even moving my keyboard to make a move, so this had to be a cutscene. I suddenly began to grow in a feel of dread as Tails walked closer to Sonic to get his attention. I felt that Tails was in danger and something bad was going to happen. I heard a faint static growing louder as Tails was but inches away from Sonic, and stopped and stuck his head out to touch him. That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger, and I felt the urge to tell Tails to get away from Sonic as the static grew louder. Suddenly, the split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open, and they were black with those red glowing dots, just like that title image, although there wasn't a smile. What happened to the screen just turned black, and the static sound was off. It stayed like that for about 7 seconds, and then a white text appeared forming a message saying, "Hello, do you want to play with me?" At this point I was creeped out. I didn't want to continue the game, and mere my curiosity got the better of me when I was taken to a different level, with the level title now saying Hide and Seek. At this time I was in Angel Island from level Sonic Free, and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked around, as if though he was scared out of his wits at this time. He actually looked at me, and he made a frantic gestures at me, as if he wanted to get it out there of the arena, while he was in the fastest possible. I was starting to get a little freaked out by this. I mean, Tails was actually breaking the 4th wall, trying to tell me to get out of there. So I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could, and I made him run as fast as he could. A pixelated version of that creepy theme when you meet Shadow that the arc of as Robotnik from Sonic.exe Adventure 2 was playing, and was making King Tails trek through the desolated forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. Suddenly I heard that creepy laugh again. That sounded awful. Kefka laugh. Right after 10 seconds have passed, I was helped Tails and run through the forest, and then started to feel flashes of Sonic popping out of everywhere on the screen. again with those black and red eyes. The music changed from that suspenseful, drowning jingle as I heard see Sonic behind Tails, slowly getting up on him, flying. Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying. The flying pose of his sprite makes looked very similar to a Full Metal Sonic's flying pose in Sonic's CD, except it was just Sonic, and he had the black and red eyes again. Only this time he had the most deranged looking grin on his face. He looked as if though he was enjoying the torment he was giving the poor little fox as he ganged up on him. Suddenly, when Tails tripped, another cutscene, the music stopped and Sonic vanished. Tails laid out there and started crying for 15 seconds. The scene was rather upsetting to watch as I kinda teared up myself. But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails, and Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come down from those blackened eyes as Sonic's grin slowly grew from his face, and he looked down at the horrified fox. I could do nothing but watch. Just then, in a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails right before the screen went black. There was a loud screeching noise that only lasted 5 seconds. The text only returned this time and said, "You're too slow. Want to try again?" Then the god-awful laugh came with it. I was shocked of what had happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have. He and Tails were supposed to be best friends, right? Why did Sonic do that to him? I shook the shock off as I was brought to the character select save file that had Tails was different. Tails was no longer in the box itself, but the TV screen itself, which was flickering with that red static. Tails' expression scared me, as his eyes were black and bleeding. His orange fur was pretty much his eyes were black and bleeding. His orange fur had gone black, and he had an expression of an anguish on his face. Tried to ignore it. I picked Knuckles next. The laugh came again, and the screen cut to black again, and stayed there for another 10 seconds. This time the level said, "You can't run." I was really freaked out now. I couldn't really tell if this was a glitch or a hack, or some kind of sick twisted joke, or anything really. But despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. The level looked very much different. It had the ground of the scrap from Brain Zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu. It had a dark reddish sky. It was the music that creeped out the most. It sounded like Gaiga's theme right after you beat Pokey in Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid just like Tails did, though not as much. More rather, he looked a little unnerved. He broke the fourth wall just like Tails and looked as if though he wasn't sure about what's going on. But I made a move anyway. He ran down the straight pathway into this dark level, and as he did, the screen started to flicker a red static a couple times, and then that maddening laugh came again. He ran down the straight pathway in this dark level, and as did the screen start to flicker red static a couple of times, and then that maddening laugh came again. Then after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on a metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of fear again, thinking something horrible was going to happen to Knuckles. He looked nauseated, walking down this blood-stained road, but I kept him going. Suddenly Knuckles ran. Sonic appeared right in front of him with those black and red eyes, and then red static appeared again. When the static vanished, showing nothing but a black screen with text saying, "Found you," I was now scared. Sonic found Knuckles already? What was going on? Anyway, red static came again, and I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking, and Sonic was nowhere to be found, and this time on the high-pitched squealing from Silent Hills 1 final boss was playing. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? I hope to God it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles in what appeared to be a pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and then punch Sonic, but Sonic vanished in black pixelated smoke before I could even land a hit. That terrible laugh went off again, then Sonic appeared behind Knuckles again, and then I made him punch again, and Sonic vanished off again laughing. Knuckles was really panicking even more, and I felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was now playing a sick, twisted little mind game with me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played as Knuckles fell to the ground on his knees and clutched his head, sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then for a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles, and the screen went to black with another distorted, screeching noise that lasted for about 3 seconds. Another message appeared. So many souls to play with, so little time. Wouldn't you agree? What the hell? Just what is going on? I also start to think that Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game, but I was too scared to think that. I was brought back to the main menu, and this time the second file box had Knuckles on the screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray, and his dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too. He had a look of sadness on his face. I began to think what in those the actual characters trapped in those TV screens on the save files, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. So I shut off the game and took a break. I took a nap. I wish I hadn't, 'cause I began to have the most disturbing nightmare. I was in the pitch blackness, although I was under a light given off the lamp that hung above my head. I could hear the cries of Knuckles and Tails nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us," and "Why did you give us to him?" and "Run away before he gets you too." Their cries died out when I heard Sonic's laugh. His laugh. It sounded like a distorted Kifake laugh. You're not fun to play with, kid. Just like your friend Kyle, though he didn't last long. I was scared and looking around for the source of the noise. Won't be long now until you join him and all my other friends. I saw him walking towards me, flickering in and out of my several directions. You can't run, kid. You're in my world now, just like the others. When he grabbed me, and I saw his bleeding back and red-eyed, grinning face, I woke up with the fright. After a couple of hours, I decided to continue playing the game. I don't know why, but I had to know. I had to figure out why this was happening. So I turned on the computer and turned on the game and selected Robotnik next. I still thought, though, this was wacky playing as Robotnik. But anyway, the level appeared again. This time it said something, which I found really freaky. This time I was in some kind of hallway. Didn't really look like it was from any of the classic Sonic games, though it had pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered. The walls were a dark grayish purple with animated candlelights and a few dark bloodstains here and there was a dark red curtain hanging above from the top part of the screen. Every 12 seconds or so, that red curtain always sways very slowly, but whenever you're playing the game, you could barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant. The piano playing was rather sad yet peaceful. Song I knew better. This was the song that played in Silent Hill Act 1, only it wasn't there in reverse. Robotnik didn't even look entirely nervous like Tails and Knuckles did, but he did have a suspicion look on his face, as if he was paranoid. He did a little animation, and I just left him standing. He turned his head to the left and to the right at least twice, and then shrugs at me, as if he had no idea where he was or what was going on. Even though I was scared out of my mind of what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual running animation. You know, when you've beaten him at the end of the classic Sonic game, and you had chased him. We continued going through the hallway. I then stopped a long flight of stairs leading downwards, and I was now nervous. When Robotnik seemed unsure of himself, though, I pressed onward. As I led Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed that the walls have gotten darker and more reddish. The red torches were now in eerie blue, and then landed on another hallway. This one was longer than the last one, or at least it felt like it. And then we headed down another flight of stairs down. This one was much longer. It took at least 1 full minute. And then when I heard that horrified Kifake laugh again, and then the music slowly faded out until it was quiet. As it did, so did the walls, turned more dark and red, and torches were in a black flame now. When Robotnik landed onto the third hallway, I noticed how it looked really creeped out. Though he tried to hide it, but I couldn't blame him. I was scared too. Suddenly Sonic popped right in front of Robotnik, the same way that he did Knuckles and then Red Static. Then Red Static lasted about 15 seconds, and then it showed me the uppermost unpleasant image. The image showed the image of Sonic standing in the darkness where you can only see his face, while his head and torso faded into black. He looked real, like you could actually see the lines of his blue fur, if you could actually feel the fur, if you touched the screen. His face, oh God, he had the most terrifying smile that I'd ever seen. And that's saying something considering I saw that image at the start of the game. His eyes were wide and black once again, crying blood as there were two small glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right back at me, as if staring into my mind. His grin was wide and demonic. It literally stretched to the sides of the face like a Cheshire cat, except Sonic had fangs, very sharp fangs, much like the werehog's teeth, except more vicious looking, somewhat yellowish from the looks of it. He looked the stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and fangs, as if he ate some animal. I stared at the gruesome image for 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off of it. I felt as if though he was looking at me, smiling at me. That face, it just looked 10 seconds from to etch itself into my brain for good. Then the screen flickered with red static again 3 times, and then on the third time I heard the Kifaka laugh, except this time it sounded distorted and demonic even. It then went back to the image again, except this time there was the text again, although it was messed up, but it was pretty much one of those horrifying things I had looked at since I had the game. I am God. It was one image that read, looking at Sonic when it hit me. I realized it right then and there. This Sonic was a monster, a pure evil, sadistic, and powerful, nightmarish, demented monster. And all of his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, possibly Kyle, is just to his little toys. And the game was his gateway to this chaotic, nightmarish world, and every hell of his victims were trapped in. Suddenly, the actual split second, I screamed, and Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly with his mouth wide open, in an unnatural length, revealing nothing but literally spiraling abyss of pure darkness, before the red static came again, this time much louder and distorted, so loud that it hurt my ears. I yelled and grabbed my ears as the red static screeched for a good 7 seconds. It then stopped and showed nothing but a black screen. As I sat there staring at the black screen, one last text came up. "Ready for round 2, Tom?" The Kifaka laughed, now standing more clear as if Sonic was right behind me. Played again about 3 times, and I looked at the text in shock and confusion. I then got booted back to the main menu, and this time the third file had just a TV image of Robotnik in the same tormented state as Tails and Knuckles. Robotnik's skin had turned dull gray, his mustache drooped and had a blackened, and his glasses broken, his blood was coming out of them, and he had a mere dead-like expression on his face. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik, and I cried for a bit. I pitied them for the agony they were going through. They were forever trapped within the game, forever tormented by that horrid hedgehog, and always will be. Then the computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it back on no matter what I did. I sat there, maybe for 25 seconds, horrified about what just happened. Sonic was the very unblended to this evil, full tortures to people who play his game in more ways than one. And then he gets bored and drags you into the game. Literally drags you to hell, where he can play with you as always, and his toy. And I can't get that name out of the computer. I think it's stuck there, but at least I imagine it to turn back on now. After I sat there for 25 seconds, I heard a voice right behind me like a whisper. "Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom." I turned around and then saw the voice coming from, and what I saw made me scream. Sitting on my bed, staring right at me, was a Sonic plushie, smiling with bloodstains under its eyes.